What's up everyone, Sean CountBlagorath here with a list. It's time for the end of the year list and I figured I'd get the bad out of the way so I can move on to the good and the amazing. This is the top 5 biggest letdowns and worst albums of 2012. There wasn't that many albums that were bad. Well, I should take that back. There were quite a few albums that were bad, but none that I care to review or even talk about just because I don't like that band, such as Emir. I think it's pointless to rant about something you knew was going to be bad to begin with. Same goes for the newest, what the hell's that band? All That Remains. Same for that album, but for now I'm going to do albums that I was really looking forward to, or albums I thought were going to be great, and pretty much all of these I thought were going to be phenomenal. But they really let me down in the biggest way. Number 5 is a pretty big letdown for me because I'm a huge fan of this band. When it comes to death metal, they are just absolutely phenomenal. When it came to their deathcore EP, which was their debut, I thought it was just mind-blowing, especially at the time because I never heard anything quite like that. Job for a Cowboy's Demonocracy was extremely lackluster for me. It was an album that I thought really was not Job for a Cowboy, to put it bluntly. It felt like an experimentation that could be good depending on your view of like shred guitar work. I wasn't feeling it. It was too melodic for them. It was too based in the lead work, and I'm not really a fan of that sort of stuff, so I'm gonna be honest, I thought the album was really bland. I can see where people would love it. It's just not for me. I thought they would do a continuation of Ruination, which is by far their best album, along with the Gloom EP. The Gloom EP was absolutely ridiculous, but this, it wasn't doing it for me, so that's definitely one of the biggest letdowns of the year. Number 4 is an album that is extremely high on everyone's list, it seems like. But for me, I thought it was just some very unorganized ideas that were just kind of vomited out into the record, and that is Between the Buried and Me's newest album, the Parallax 2 Future Sequence. I liked the Parallax 1 Hypersleep Dialogues. I thought that was pretty good, but if that was going to be the direction this new album was going in, I was kind of on the fence, and the more I listened to it, the more unorganized and forced the album seems. It was just a bunch of good ideas, but they weren't fully formed ideas. It was just a big jumbled mess and a cluster of just so many different sounds and styles, and it just didn't really work. I can see where people would like it, but for me personally, it just felt very unorganized, very forced, and quite honestly, it was a big letdown for me. Number 3 is an album I reviewed, but I took down my review because my opinion has changed so much. And I may re-review it, especially if I get a promo from the label for this, because it's not coming out technically till next year, the physical format, but the band put it out as a download early because a unmixed and unmastered version got leaked, and that is Rings of Saturn's Dinger. Dinger is an extremely technical album. And with that comes with, they suffer from what I like to call necrophagous syndrome, which is you're talented, you can sweep, you can tap, but you can't write a damn song. All there is to the music on this album is sweeping and tapping and really forced breakdowns. A lot of the tech parts were really forced. They were technical for the sake of being technical, and that really drags the album down, along with horrible vocals. That the vocals itself could have been absolutely great, but the way they mixed them and the effects that they put on them and EQ'd them just made them sound absolutely terrible. And they also suffer from a terrible drum mix, which includes a very quiet kick drum and a ridiculously loud triggered snare where it just sounds programmed and has zero human element to it. The guitars are too loud in the mix. I think they could have been toned back a little bit. The tone was alright, but I I just felt like a very forced record. I may get into more detail with it later, but it's number 3 on the biggest letdowns of the year. Number 2 is an album that got a review that got me a lot of hate. Yeah, I'm just gonna go out and say it. This is hands down the worst album in this band's discography, and quite possibly one of the worst of this year. In fact, it is number 2, as you well know. This is Burzum's Umskiptar. Umskiptar was an incredibly, ungodly, just over-the-top, boring album. Just everything about it just was a snorefest from beginning to end. The only good thing that this album had going for it is there were some good ideas and some very, very good singing. But other than that, this was a ridiculously just boring snorefest of a record. And there's just no way around it. This is the most boring album I've heard this year. From the mediocre riffs and the very unorganized ideas brought forth on this record just really are all bad factors into making this such a bad album. It's an album that won't grow on me at all. It's an album that just seems very forced in every sense of the word, and there's nothing about this album that's truly redeemable other than the clean vocals. And now for the worst album of the year, and hands down the biggest letdown of the year, is once again another review that got quite a bit of butthurt on it. And I can kind of understand why people will defend this band, because they will defend anything that these dudes put out. And that is Nile and their new album At the Gates of Sethu. What a horrible, horrible piece of crap that album is. Whoever mixed, mastered, and produced that album should never, ever put his hands on another record again, because he destroyed what could have been a decent listen. But what really holds this album back is not only just the production, but the vocals and the fact that everything is just recycled ideas, and there's zero, there's nothing brought forth that's truly new and innovative in the music. And when you play technical death metal, I kind of understand having a status quo of a certain sound you gotta maintain throughout each record, but to basically take all of your records, combine them into one, and slap a new title on it, and say, hey, here's a new album, but with worse production and terrible vocals, you're not doing anything for yourself except for losing a fan. I still listen to the old albums, but this one is just terrible. The low vocals that were done by Dallas are just some of the worst vocals I have heard this year. As I said, it sounds kind of like a very bad impersonation of a terrible death metal vocalist. Just horrible mix, and the mastering, it peaks at levels it shouldn't. It gets buried in the mix. Guitars just come through and punch you in the face, but not in a good way. The solos are ear-piercingly loud. The bass will either overbear the mix or not even be heard at times. Terrible vocals flying over top of everything with extremely loud, clicky kick drums, just destroying the entire album. It's not a good listen, and hands down the worst album of the year. But that's my top 5 worst albums of the year. Coming up is going to be my top 10 favorite videos. Then I'm going to do 5 EPs, and then the top 20 albums of the year. So look forward to that. And let me know what your guys' least favorite albums are of this year. Leave them in a comment or leave me a video response. That'd be great. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And as always, keep it metal.